Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Know-How is brought to you by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This episode of Know-How is brought to you by iFixit. You can fix it, and iFixit makes it easy with free step-by-step repair guides, high-quality replacement parts, and all the tools you'll ever need. For $10 off your purchase of $50 or more, go to iFixit.com/twit and enter the code KNOWHOW at checkout. And by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free 2-week trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code KNOWHOW. On this episode of Know-How, the future of lithium batteries, Brian's going to show you a little bit about Tor and the new Mac OS X and quadcopters. Welcome to Know-How. It's the Twitch show where we build, bend, break, and upgrade. I'm Father Robert Ballester.
And I'm Brian Burnett.
For the next 45 minutes, an hour,
give or take.
60 minutes, 70 minutes, 2 hours.
The fact that we're recording this at almost 8 o'clock on Thursday.
Super special edition.
Who knows what's gonna happen?
We're kind of tired. We're kind of loopy. We may just never stop.
Thank you, Apple.
Anyways, we're going to give you some of the projects that we've been working on the last couple of weeks and days and months.
Things we've been geeking out on.
Exactly, so that you can geek out on your own. But before we do that, I want to talk batteries.
Yes. So the main limiting factor with batteries and electric vehicles is that it takes a while to charge them. They're expensive, but every day there seems to be a new advancement, and this is one you just came across? This
is one that we just found. This was actually covered in a story about a bus bar. It's this charging device for electronic buses. One of the biggest, as you mentioned, one of the biggest drawbacks of batteries has always been that they don't charge up that quickly, right?
Right.
You use up a lot of the power, which is great. I mean, you can store a lot, especially in a lithium-ion battery. I mean, lithium ions are found in our phones, our laptops, pretty much everywhere now, because they are easy to use, because they hold a relatively large amount of power.
Relatively safe, you know, as long as you use the right charger and they don't explode, or you pierce them when you're flying a quadcopter into a wall.
Yeah, actually, Alex, I believe I have a YouTube video in there that can show you what will happen if you accidentally puncture a lithium-ion battery. You see, these are all held within plastic bags, like poly, lithium poly. And they're great because they can form fit to, say, the case of your computer or your quadcopter. But
no.
that happens if you puncture the bag. So yeah, you just don't do that.
Yeah, that doesn't seem quite as safe as I was hoping.
And the best part about this, they're trying to use a CO2 fire extinguisher. That will not extinguish a lithium fire.
No. Yeah, and what would you do in that situation?
You would let it burn.
Yeah, because even starving it of oxygen or throwing it in water wouldn't do
Well, the
anything,
only
right?
salt water will actually destroy the chemistry that's reacting. But I mean, unless you're walking around with a bottle of salt water.
In case of emergency, we have like a break glass and there's salt water.
Unless you're next to the ocean, you can just toss the whole thing in which case you're just going to ride off the vehicle.
Yeah, you just push it into the ocean.
But here's the cool thing. Some scientists over in Singapore have figured out a way to increase the current, the charging current and the discharge current of a standard lithium battery. We've had this technology for a while. We've used carbon nanotubes.
Right, which are really expensive.
Crazy expensive, very rare, hard to make. But the way that a lithium-ion battery works is the chemistry, which allows you to store electricity, electrons, actually starts to break down as you force electrons into it.
Right, and that's why batteries start to die after a certain amount of charges and stuff like that?
Yeah, typically 1,000 to 2,000 charges, a lithium-ion battery will no longer hold a charge. You've seen it on your phone, you know?
Yeah, it seems like after about a year, my phone's batteries start to hold a little bit less of a charge from there on.
Right, so it's a well-known phenomenon. But what these folks have done is they figured out a way to get the benefits of having carbon nanotubes. And that is, inside the chemistry, a carbon nanotube greatly increases the amount of surface area you have, which means that increases the amount of area at which the reaction can take place.
So it's using the area more efficiently then.
Exactly, right. The chemistry doesn't have to be stressed as much, which means it lasts longer.
Cool.
Now, they have figured out a way to get the effect of a carbon nanotube, but using titanium dioxide.
Which is something that's a lot more prevalent.
It's everywhere, right? It's in the soil. We use it as food. Yeah, sunscreen uses titanium dioxide. It's essentially titanium rust.
Sounds delicious.
Yes, and their process, you could eat it. Their process has allowed them to take titanium rust, and turn it into nanotubes. So you get titanium dioxide nanotubes. You dump those into a gel. You mix that gel with the lithium-ion chemistry, and suddenly you have a battery, and this is the amazing part, that doesn't last 1,000 or 2,000 charges, or doesn't last 1 year or 2 years, but lasts 20 years.
So they've increased the lifespan of a battery by tenfold.
Tenfold. But it's not the lifespan that they're after, it's the charging capacity.
And how fast it can charge.
Yes, because that's a problem. If you look at a standard lithium-ion battery, so this is a lithium cell. This is a 3.7 volt lithium poly cell. The limiting factor here is I can only push so much current into it before it bursts into flames. Because because I'm overloading the chemistry and it will die. Well, the lithium dioxide, again, because it's increasing the surface area available in that chemistry, I can now pump a ton more power, which means, like, for example, let's say I had something like a Tesla, a performance supercar, correct?
Right.
And even then, even when it's designed to charge quickly, it's still going to take me a good, hour, 2 hours, even with a crazy fast charger.
To get back up to 100%?
To get it back up to 100%. And every time I do that, every time I fast charge a lithium battery, I'm actually damaging it. I'm reducing its life. This technology could potentially allow us to go from 0 to full on a Tesla battery in about 45 seconds.
That's awesome.
And it doesn't damage the battery. The battery can handle that amount of current. And it also it can discharge more power than normal, which means I can get more power to the wheels without risking any of the
As far as traction will go, right? Like, because you just will be spinning your tires otherwise. But so have they implemented this with the buses you were saying?
Yeah. They're actually testing it right now. So it's called the bus bar. And the idea is it's a electronic bus that's using these lithium titanium dioxide batteries. They pull into a station, a bar drops down from like a post that's hanging over the bus, and it pumps super high voltage. And it charges the battery from 0 to full in about 2 minutes, which is about the time of a bus stop.
That's how long, that's how long you're waiting to let people on and off. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Now, the amazing thing about this is not just that it's cool technology and we can charge batteries faster, but imagine what the current battery business is built on in the electronic vehicle market. I need more batteries that contain more power because I only want to charge it up once because it takes 20 hours for me to get to a full charge.
But the more batteries you add, the more weight you add, which then it's like diminishing return.
Yeah, it's like putting fuel into a spaceship where you could put more fuel, but then you need more fuel to carry that fuel. It's the same thing with batteries. You could put more batteries, but then you need more batteries to carry those batteries.
Right.
If I knew that I could charge my car in 30 seconds rather than 2, 4, 8 hours, I could potentially only carry enough for, say, 30 miles of range, down from 75, and just count on stopping for 30 seconds someplace that will charge up my vehicle and then go again.
If this was something that was like implemented at like a street intersection or something like that, if you're at a stoplight, you're there for, 30 seconds to a minute anyway. What if that was charging your battery at the same time?
And I like that just because it means finally we can get electronic vehicles down to a decent curb weight, not weighed down. It also means since I have to carry fewer batteries, I get more range off of my existing batteries, more performance, and ultimately it means there's less toxic junk that goes into the atmosphere because I have to create a new battery pack for my car.
Right. No, remember when we did that review for BYB of the electric motorcycle?
Yeah.
The biggest con was that charging. And so when I used it for my commute, it made sense because it was like 20 miles from my house to here, and so 40 miles total in a day. But Tony, when he tried to go to work, he lives in Emeryville, which is like 80 miles away, all freeway. He wasn't able to make it. But I mean, if you're able to charge the battery that quickly, he could have just stopped somewhere
Exactly.
Just for, like, pull
30
off the
seconds.
freeway, 30
Plug
seconds,
in, done, go.
back. Yeah.
And actually, Rourke's in the chat room is saying, well, what does that do to the duty cycle? Well, we already talked about that.
Yeah.
Because you've got these titanium dioxide nanotubes inside the chemistry, you're not stressing the chemistry.
Right.
You're not forcing electrons into it against the stability of the lithium poly chemistry. That means that it lasts a lot longer. Again, from 2 years to 20 years. So you get a longer lasting battery that can hold as much or more power, that can charge and discharge more quickly, that doesn't cost anything more than a current lithium poly battery. I mean, it's kind of no-brainer.
That's cool. And I mean, as far as battery technology goes, it's only going to get better from this point.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were watching Top Gear earlier today, and the biggest cons with electric vehicles is the expense and the range.
Yeah.
But it seems like every year it's getting a little bit better, and with the nanotube technology and stuff like that, I'm looking forward to that stuff.
So you heard it here, folks. The future of electronic vehicles is rust.
Is rust.
That's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, it is strange.
Huh. That's
But
what it is, titanium dioxide.
I like that idea.
Now we're all about battery technology. We're all about fixing our things. And, you know, a lot of us are used to having to open up our devices to pull out those old lithium-ion batteries because they do wear out after a certain number of charges. You talked about this, right? Your phone starts to die.
Yes.
And especially if you have a phone that's not replaceable with the battery, you actually have to open up the case.
Yes, that's exactly what I have.
You need the tools to do it.
Yes.
Which is why we're happy to have on the show iFixit. iFixit is the place that you go when you need the tools to do the hacks that you need to complete. Whether it's replacing the battery in your laptop or your telephone, or let's say disassembling a gadget that you got from McDonald's. iFixit is your one-stop shop, not just for the tools, but also the instruction manuals, the videos, and the forums to help you hack your way into a better geek lifestyle. Now, iFixit offers a free online repair kit for pretty much everything. They have more than 10,000 repair guides for everything from electronics like your smartphone, your tablet, and your game console, to your home appliances, your clothing, and yeah, even your bike. They also have foolproof instructions to fix all your stuff. Now, if you've shattered your iPhone screen, if you need to repair the red ring of death on your Xbox, or swap the battery on your Galaxy S3, iFixit has got you covered with parts, tools, and repair guides. iFixit also makes the most trusted repair tools for consumer electronics, including the ProTech Toolkit. Now, this ProTech Toolkit offers you 70 tools to assist with any mod, malfunction, or misfortune that may come your way. In fact, I'm going to have my lovely Vanna White co-host here show you what comes in this ProTech Toolkit. This is the gold standard for electronics works, from garage hackers to the CIA and FBI, but more importantly, their unique tools are used by repair technicians and modders everywhere. Now, this includes iFixit's 54-bit driver kit with 54 standard, specialty, and security bits. This is important. If you've ever tried to mod a device and you haven't had the bits and you've been using like the wrong one that kind of works, don't strip your tools, don't strip your bits. Get the right tool and do it right the first time. This includes Phillips bits, Pentalo bits, Torx and Torx security bits, Tri-Wing bits, which is popular in video game consoles, and Triangle bits in case you want to hack McDonald's toys. They've also included the swivel top precision driver to get into those hard-to-reach places, and that flex extension for those hard-to-reach screws. They include an ESD-safe precision tweezer for delicate manipulation and an anti-static wrist that keeps your devices safe from accidental static discharge. They include nylon spudgers, metal spudgers, and plastic opening tools for prying and scraping without damaging your device. If you've ever tried to open up a tablet with a flat screwdriver, you know that it's going to damage the case. Well, don't do it. Get the spudger, and again, do it right. It's lightweight, it's compact, it's got this durable tool roll which makes on-the-go repairs easy. It is the no-brainer choice for professionals and amateurs alike. At only $64.95, it's backed by a lifetime warranty, so you know it's going to be a good buy. Hobbyists and home DIY fixers alike use the ProTech Toolkit for doorknobs, eyeglasses, cabinet doors, sink fixtures, and more. If you're looking for a great addition to an artist or hobbyist tool chest, well, look no further. Best of all, there are thousands of free iFixit guides to help you put your tools to use. It's not just the tools, it's what they teach you on how to use them. So here's what we want you to do. We want you to try iFixit. With iFixit, you can fix it yourself. Visit ifixit.com/twit for more than 10,000 free step-by-step guides. iFixit also sells every part and tool that you'll ever need. Enter the code KNOWHOW at checkout and you'll save $10 off any purchase of $50 or more. That's ifixit.com/twit and the code KNOWHOW. And we thank iFixit for their support of Know How.
I should really stop disassembling things when we do that.
Did you break? We need this.
I
Did
put
you?
it back.
I saw you. I'm like, oh no, what's he doing?
It was a very tiny screw, but I was able to get back in there. So.
Great. Now the show has been derailed. Okay, now we're going to be getting to this little piece of kit right here. We're going to show you how to fly and build a quadcopter. But before that, Brian, you had an interesting tidbit for those people who maybe want a bit more security out of their browsing.
Well, so I was browsing Reddit pretty recently, which I tend to do far too often, and I came across a Kickstarter that had become super popular, and I couldn't really figure out why. And it was called an Anon box.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard about this.
Right.
The idea is it's Tor in a box. So if people who don't know, the Tor network it's the Onion router.
Right.
And the idea is you anonymize your entrances and your exits so that someone who is looking at, say, the IP address of your traffic won't come back to you. They'll come back to a node in the Tor network, which won't lead them anywhere.
Right. And it's certainly not, we're not going to get into like how secure it is.
Right.
And you should probably be forewarned, you're not going to like log in with your passwords or put credit card information while you're on the Tor network, because it's not like perfectly secure anyway. But yeah, like you were saying, the Tor network is a way of anonymizing the way you browse the internet and keeps sites from, keeping track of your information, your IP address and stuff like that. But we had stumbled across a project also called the Raspberry Pi, the Tor, what is it? The Onion Pi. That's what they call it. Sounds kind of tasty.
Yeah. Which is actually we're assembling one of these for Know How. It's super simple. All it is a wireless adapter inside your Raspberry Pi. It's a custom distro so that it will run Tor. Everything runs inside the Raspberry Pi, so you connect it to a wired network and you connect your laptop, your tablet, your phone to the wireless signal coming off the Raspberry Pi, and it automatically does Tor.
Right.
You don't have to install anything on any of your devices. You're just on the Tor network as long as you're going through that Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, and it's a pretty simple project to do.
It's about 40 bucks.
It's about
total.
40 bucks, but this Kickstarter of a non-project got like $500,000 when all they asked for was like $7 grand or something like that. So I just kind of sat down trying to figure that out, but I think the demand for it was that people are looking for a plug-and-play box, but as far as our viewers go, I'm pretty sure people would rather build it themselves if they were going to use it at all. So that'll be a future project we do, but to introduce Tor to you, it used to be that you could just download an extension for Firefox.
Right.
It's actually, I would want to say it's maybe a little bit easier now. You go to Tor, their website, and you download their bundle, which is basically another version of Firefox that just has Tor implemented in it.
Right. And the reason why they did that, by the way, is they deprecated the plugin because what they were finding is it was too easy for someone who was trying to get your real identity to manipulate your computer into sending real identifying information.
Right. And that's why in Tor, Flash is disabled.
Right.
So if you try and watch YouTube, don't do that through the Tor network. You can't play games through Tor either because it's bouncing your connection off of so many things. It's just going to be super slow anyway.
Right. Yeah, your latency and your speed's definitely going to drop when you're running through the Tor network. Think of it as like we use ProXPN here at the Brick House. That's my service of choice. You do lose a lot of speed because you have to go through a proxy, which is popping off somewhere in the world that maybe you don't know about. You lose a lot more with Tor because it can be unpredictable. The way Tor is supposed to work is it's a lot like routing the internet. It's always going to look for the fastest path possible, the lowest latency node possible. But even then, it's not really going to give you streaming quality service.
No. But if you did want to, just play around with it, you'd go to the website, you download the Tor Bundle, and Alex, if you go to my laptop, so this is the torproject.org website, and you will navigate to whatever OS you're using. It works on Windows, OS 10, hopefully Mavericks, or not Mavericks, the one I just installed before the show, Yosemite, and Linux. But once you've downloaded the Tor browser and you've installed it, it's pretty... What are you doing here? What is this? Yosemite is so new to me now. Yeah, Yeah, okay, that works. Tor browser. I'm going to navigate to the Tor browser. I've already taken the liberty of downloading it and installing it. And what it's doing here is connecting to the network really quick. And here is the Tor browser. And it looks really similar to Firefox.
Yeah. And as long as you get that congratulations screens, it means you're now anonymized.
I'm now on the network. So when I travel to different websites or anything like that, I'm now anonymous relatively.
Yeah, and again, this is going to slow you down because you're using a proxy. So you're going to be operating at the slowest speed of the slowest node that it goes through, which is it still loading?
It's still going.
Yeah, it's not.
It actually was faster when I was playing with it earlier, but it seems to be even slower at this moment.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, you can't really complain about it. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're getting into a network that's using shared resources, even more so than the internet. So it is going to slow you down. But if you value your privacy and if you really don't want people to be able to see what you're doing, that's a really good way to do it. Now here's the rub. Even if you're using Tor, if you suddenly sign into Facebook or you sign into Google Plus or Twitter, you're identifying yourself. So yeah, you got to. It's not like you plug into a Tor network and it's magically erasing who you are. If you do anything to identify yourself while you are connected to the Tor network, someone who is looking through the logs can still figure out who you are. Wow, that is crazy
abnormally slow. Like usually it doesn't take that long. But I think one of the better explanations I heard for it was if you go to a new city and you've never been there before, you're fairly certain that you're pretty anonymous. But if you rent a car and you use your driver's license or you use your credit card at a hotel, then there's chances of people knowing your identity. So it's kind of the similar situation when visiting sites. Yeah. So
what I would say is this. I'd say that anybody watching this show should at least get this installed on your computer. Get the Tor browser in there so you can at least play with Tor. Know what it is, know how it works, and most importantly, know its limitations. I know too many people who got something like the onion pie. The onion Tor? The Tor pie.
The onion pie. Yeah,
onion pie. Who have used something like the onion pie and they thought that they were automatically anonymized, and then they got freaked out when Amazon or Google started pitching them advertising.
Like, how did they know?
Yeah, I'm going through Tor. It's like, well, you know, you've identified yourself after the step of anonymizing yourself. So if you use it, you'll understand how the technology works and you'll understand its limitations, which is really what we go for.
And that's kind of the problem I see with like these Kickstarter projects like the Anon box. Like I feel like a lot of people are probably just going to buy this, plug it in and assume that they don't have to change any of their habits or that it'll just work, you know?
Yeah.
But that's why we want to do the Raspberry Pi project.
Exactly.
And you can build it and then you kind of understand a little bit better about how it works and why we'd want to use it.
And I think that's the way that we should do it. When we finally do a real Tor, like hardware project, we should do a couple of demonstrations to show what it will anonymize and what it won't.
Yeah.
Like when you search at Google, when you go to Amazon with your browser signed in, it's not going to anonymize you.
Right.
If you go to a site and you're using anonymous browsing and your computer's not sending out any erroneous packets that will emerge on the outside of the node, then you are anonymous. So that's the sort of knowledge that I think our know-it-alls need.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I'm looking forward to playing with the iGuardian at some point. That was like another project. That's just for monitoring your traffic going in and out on your network. But at least people are becoming more aware of some of the security things and stuff. So.
And that's my thing. You know, I think if we can make people want to be more secure, even if it's not being completely anonymous, but protecting themselves from the threats that are on the internet or maybe coming from inside their network on a known box, I think we make for a better networking experience for everyone.
That's right.
Speaking of making a better network experience for everyone, you know what does make a better network experience? Having an awesome site, something that's responsive, something that's inexpensive, something that lets you focus on the things that are important, like providing great content.
And making it look good.
Making it look good. Oh, we know on the internet it's all about location, 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 and that first impression. You get about 5 seconds before someone says, yes, I'm in, or no, I'm not.
That's kind of what I thought of when we were going to do the show together. I was like, that guy.
Yeah, no, I'm just like, yeah, I'm out. I'm out. Thankfully, you gave me a second chance.
Yeah.
You're coming with this? No, but you know what? You don't have to come with this. if you use Squarespace. Squarespace is your one-stop shop, the place that you go on the internet if you've got a project, you've got a website, if you've got a portfolio that you want to show off. If you're a creative content creator and you want to be able to show off your skills, your talents, you want to be able to show off your portfolio, you want to be able to show off your video, your photos, you don't want to have to worry about your domain registration or your back end or whatever you're going to be using to manage content. Squarespace takes that all away from you and gives you your one-stop shop to be on the internet. Now, I've used Squarespace consistently over the past couple of years because they're easy to use. I work with a lot of non-tech savvy organizations that just want to make pictures. They want to make notices. They want to make news. They want to make articles. And they want it up and available for people as soon as possible. That's what Squarespace lets them do. Now, Squarespace is constantly improving their platform. They've got new features, new designs, and even better support. They have 25 beautiful templates for you to start with, and they recently added a logo creator tool, which is a basic tool for individuals and small businesses with limited resources that allows you to create a simple identity for yourself. It's easy to use. It's, in fact, incredibly easy to use. But if you do want or need some help, Squarespace has live chat and email support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Plus, there's a completely redesigned customer help site for easier access to self-help articles and video workshops. Now available for all subscription plan levels, Squarespace gives you the ability to accept donations, e-commerce, which is great for nonprofits, for cash wedding registries, and school fund drives. It's also just $8 a month at start and includes a free domain name if you sign up for a year, so it's not going to break the bank. And it's mobile ready. The new Squarespace metric app for iPhone and iPad allows you to check site stats like page views, unique visitors, and social media follows. With the blog app, you can make text updates, tap and drag images to change layout, and monitor comments on the go, all from your mobile device. Now, even their code is beautiful. One of the other shows I do on the Twit TV network is Coding 101, and so I like to look at how they wrote their code. And Squarespace, if you actually go past that veneer, their code is as beautiful as the imagery that you see in the front. That just tells me that they pay attention to detail, and I like that. Also, hosting is included, so you don't have to worry about tracking down who's registering your domain, who's hosting your site, and who's managing all your code. It's all in one space. So here's what we want you to do. We want you to start a free 2-week trial with no credit card required and start building your website today. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure to use the offer code KNOWHOW to get 10% off and to show your support for KnowHow. We thank Squarespace for their support of KnowHow. A better web awaits, and it starts with your new Squarespace website. Boom.
Yeah, I like just playing with the logo creator.
I really do.
Because you don't realize how hard it is to come up with a logo until you sit down and you're like, I suck.
It's funny that they created that tool because that is one of the most frustrating parts of trying to create an online branding identity. You want something unique, right?
Yeah.
You don't want something cookie cutter. You don't want something that you created from like a, what do they call that? Those template packets that you might come.
No.
You want
people
something that's
spot
unique.
those right away.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and that's what they give you.
Speaking of spotting things right away, quadcopters flying around the studio lately.
Yeah, we've had a lot of them, right?
We've been having a lot of fun with them.
Probably
Maybe not so much some of our coworkers.
No. There are a few coworkers who are terrified by quadcopters.
As they very well should be.
They should be, because actually, no, this one is pretty good. I do want to do this demonstration really quickly because I know there are some people who are saying we're going to kill our coworkers. One of the nice things about this is even at speed, if I were to put my hand in here, it's nice. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't cut.
Let me try.
Okay. No, but what we want to do right now is this is the first official quadcopter episode. This is going to be an ongoing thing where we're going to show our audience how to build a quadcopter from scratch. Choose what kind of class they want to build, choose the capabilities, and then take off.
Well, when I first started looking at quadcopters, I was like, I know which one I want. It's the big one that can carry a camera, without actually thinking about how good I am at flying one.
Yeah.
And so I took one of the ones that we've had here at Twit out to an empty field, because that's a good place to start. Shot it about 300 feet in the air, panicked, let go of the throttle. It started to plummet, fell over onto its back.
Yeah.
And then when I got back on the throttle, shot it straight into the ground. Which, to its credit, didn't just initially explode. It didn't die, but I definitely broke a lot of the blades, and I could have saved myself a little heartache by getting something like this and practicing.
Well, I mean, even more than that, the reason why we're starting with this, how quadcopters work, is because once you understand how it stays in the air, it gives you a better ability to control them.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's a lot of physics in here. There's a lot of science that once you get, you'll be able to control it much better. That's what we're going to do today.
And once you kind of get an idea of it, it actually makes you even more appreciative of the kind of technology behind it.
Yeah, it's even something like this, which is a toy, is a technology bonanza. Now, let's talk about this. When we talked about remote control plane last week, remember that thing? It was easy to see how it was controlled. We talked a little bit about Bernoulli's principle. We talked about Newton's second and third laws for creating lift. And we talked about deflection. So if I've got an engine in the front and it's making the plane go forward, if I have a rudder in the back that deflects right or left and forces air in that direction, we know, because of Newton's law of motion, that it's going to deflect the plane in the opposite direction, right? If I angle this way, it pushes it this way. If I angle this way, it pushes it that way. The same thing goes for the elevators and the ailerons. If I deflect air in one direction, I create thrust in another.
Which is like a concept that's a little bit easier to wrap your head around. But then when you look at a quadcopter, which has no surfaces to deflect air, like how does it turn?
Exactly. Comparing this to a plane, you're like, okay, there's no wings, so there's nothing to get the Bernoulli effect, except for these are actually wings. Propellers are wings. But there's no traditional control surfaces like you have in a plane. Even if you were to compare this to a helicopter, in a helicopter, you typically have one big rotor, or two, and then you have a tail rotor. Now,
that helps keep it steady, because with the top propeller rotating around, it makes the helicopter want to spin.
Right, which is also Newton's law of motion. If I've got a blade that's spinning this way, it's going to want the body to spin the opposite direction, right? Because there's an opposite force.
That's those spectacular helicopter crashes that you see where they're just...
And to keep that from happening, you typically have some sort of tail assembly, a tail thrust assembly. Sometimes it's sort of like a ducted jet. Most of the time, it's a tail rotor. It's like a small rotor on its side. What that can do is that controls how much of the torque it will go along with, right? So if I have a blade spinning this way and I don't want my helicopter to spin this way, I have a tail rotor right here that cancels out that force and it keeps it true. Now a helicopter will also have variable blade geometry on the rotors, so that I can tilt it forward, back, left, right. Again, awesome tech, but
a quadcopter do that though?
There's none of that. There's no variable blade technology. There's no tail rotor. There's nothing. The only parts that move on a quadcopter are these motors and the props that are attached to them. So understanding why a quadcopter can go up into the air and understanding why it can go left, right, forward, back, is all about understanding those laws that we were talking about, the Newton's. It's the same thing is in effect. It's Newton's second and third law. It just doesn't work the same way as, say, a standard fixed wing or a helicopter.
And unlike an airplane or some sort of fixed wing aircraft, this is fly-by-wire. This is all just being done by the controller inside.
There is no such thing as a manual control quadcopter. You could manually control a plane. You could have a cable that's connected to the rudder and the aileron and the elevator. In fact, that's a lot of the lower ones. That's what they do. You can't have that in a quadcopter. There's no way that a human would be able to respond fast enough to keep this thing from falling out of the sky. Imagine this is essentially 4 columns of thrust, and you have to balance those 4 columns of thrust in order to make this thing do what you want.
And then when you talk about going forward or backwards, you were saying that these propellers, if you wanted to go forward, would slow down, while the propellers in the rear would increase throttle.
Let's talk about that. So if you go to the overhead, one of the things that you'll notice really quickly, and you can tell by the pitch of the blades, this blade will spin clockwise. This blade spins counterclockwise. This blade is going to spin in the same direction as that blade. This blade is going to spin in the same direction as that blade.
So they kind of cancel each other out.
See, so if you just wait till it slows down, you can kind of see that. So the reason why I have that is because, remember, the helicopter, if I have a blade spinning this way, Newton's law says that the body is going to want to spin the opposite direction. So I have this propeller, which is the same weight, spinning in the opposite direction, and these two torque forces will cancel each other out. Same thing goes for the back. if I have a blade spinning in this direction, I make this blade spin in the counter direction so that it balances out those torque forces. And that's why typically when you're building a quadcopter or a sextcopter or an octocopter, it's always an even number of motors because you need to be able to balance out the force.
That makes sense.
There are tricopters. They're
Yeah.
kind of ridiculous. Don't do that.
I've never seen
They're
that before.
really hard
I
to
have seen the helicopters that have one blade underneath and then one blade over
Right.
the top, and
Right.
then they kind of.
But it's the same idea. As long as you've got a balanced set, so something that will cancel out the torque, then you can control it. If all of these were spinning in the same direction,
Yeah.
there'd be no way to control the yaw. This thing would just keep spinning and spinning and spinning, and there's no way to stop it.
So on an airplane though, that has one prop in the front, what does it do to counterbalance?
Yeah, well, so
that?
typically what
Is
you
it
do
the
is
trim?
you would just use the elevators or the ailerons just to keep the plane,
At slightly.
well, just pushing back against that.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Right?
that makes sense.
Yeah, which you can do. You don't have any.
You
of
don't
that
have that on
a
the
quadcopter.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about motion. If I want to hover, all of these props are going to go ahead and go to the overhead. All of these props are going to spin at the same speed, and what will happen is I'll have I'll have the copter more or less hovering at the same rate and the same. Let's get back on the camera. So all of my propellers are going at the same rate, and 2 of them are going clockwise and 2 of them are going counterclockwise. So that's how I handle hovering.
Whew.
Now, the question is, how do I handle direction?
Right.
Because unlike a helicopter, I have no variable pitch on this. I have no tail rotor. What I do have is I have minute control over how fast each motor spins each propeller. So if I wanted to go forward, what would you think I would do?
Well, then you would decrease power to these and increase power to the back.
Right, which will cause the quadcopter to tilt forward, and now any thrust being generated by the propellers will actually pull the quadcopter forward. Right?
That makes sense, but then how does it pivot?
Ah, okay, so exactly. So you picked up on something very good. If you go to the overhead again, making this go in any direction is really simple. If I want to make it go forward, I drop thrust in the forward side.
Right.
I increase thrust in the rear side, and it makes it go in that direction. So front, back, left, right, that's how it works. Yeah. To make it rotate, this is what I love about quadcopters. It gets kind of tricky here. Yeah. I already know that diagonal propellers are going to spin in the same direction, right? So again, if this is spinning in this direction, which way will the body of the quadcopter want to spin?
To the opposite
right.
direction.
So if this is going this way, the quadcopter wants to go this way.
Like that, yeah.
This balances it out so it doesn't. But what I can do is I can increase thrust to these propellers, decrease thrust to those propellers.
And that'll make it.
And now the torque is unbalanced, and it makes it spin.
That's cool.
And if I want to go the other way, I reverse it. I increase thrust here, I decrease thrust there, and it makes the quadcopter spin back.
And it does all that on the fly.
It does all that on the fly. Because remember,
cool.
This is fly-by-wire. If you look inside, you probably can't see it, but if you look inside of your quadcopter, if you were to get one of these, there's a small single board computer that's the receiver and the flight controller. When I give it an input, when I tell it to increase throttle, when I tell it to go left or right, it's using a 6-axis accelerometer. So forward, back, left, right, up, and down to be able to figure out what it should do in order to do what I'm telling it to do.
Okay.
Right?
Now, one thing you were also saying about some of these lower end models is that when you would try and pivot left, it would actually lose altitude, and pivot right, it would actually go up.
Yeah, and again, you see this in a lot of the models that you can't balance. The ones that we're going to be building, they're use far more powerful flight controllers. But if you look at this, so if I'm increasing thrust in one and decreasing thrust in another, if the flight controller is not really good, it might over increase and make it shoot up. And in this particular case, when I spin the other way, it actually drops the thrust on the other two too much, and it drops.
Right.
So I kind of have to ride the throttle. But again, the more advanced ones, especially the ones that have GPS, will station keep.
And by more advanced, I mean, I'm just thinking, ka-ching.
Ka-ching,
But this
ka-ching.
one, we're having a ton of fun flying outside the studio, inside the studio, and we've wrecked it a ton, and it still just keeps going. And you've actually made some modifications to it, which have helped.
I have, a few.
Uh,
I've lightened the load, I've increased the battery, and I may have upped the voltage to the motors. But you don't have to do that. What we want to do now is we want to go and show you a quick video on why you should pick one of these things up, because they're only about $50 or so. We're going to show you where to get them. But first, here's why you should pick up yourself a quad trainer.
The Quadforce video drone is a self-contained, remotely piloted quadcopter kit with an onboard camera from Swan. Out of the box, you'll find most everything you need to get up and running in minutes. The quad, a remote, battery and charger, safety attachments, and spare props. Just add 4 AA batteries to the remote, connect the 3.7-volt 500 mAh LiPo battery pack to the charger, then plug the charger into any USB-powered port. When the red light turns off, in between 30 and 60 minutes, you're ready to fly. But before you take flight, first take a close look at your kit. The Quadforce measures 10 inches diagonally and uses 2 sets of counter-rotating 5¼ props. The props are turned by 4 in-running motors. Slung under the quad is a CMOS camera that can shoot 2560 by 1440 stills and 720p video at 30 frames per second. The camera rear loads micro SD cards up to 8 GB, and a 2 GB card is included in the kit. Sliding back the camera reveals the battery tray and just a glimpse of the single-board receiver and flight controller that keeps the Quadforce in the air. The remote control is a 6-channel 2.4 GHz digital spread spectrum transmitter capable of controlling the quad out to about 100 meters, or 330 feet for us imperial folk. The left stick controls throttle and yaw of the quad, while the right stick gives you control over the forward, back, left-right movement. The top left button toggles between high and low power, letting you choose between performance and battery life. Pressing the top right button triggers the camera, while long pressing the button starts video recording. A simple LCD screen at the bottom of the remote shows your current control inputs, while the buttons to either side of the panel activate the onboard laser and bomb bay. Just kidding, those buttons are totally fake. With the battery charged, it's time to take to the air. Slide the battery into the battery tray and connect it to the quad. Attach the landing gear and the prop protectors. Put the quad on a level surface and turn it on. The lights will quick flash for a few seconds while the flight computer levels itself. Once the lights turn to a slow flash, turn on the transmitter and advance the throttle all the way up and back down to bind the remote to the quad. When the lights turn steady on, you're ready to fly. If you're a beginner, start slow. Give it just enough throttle to get off the ground and practice keeping the quad at the same altitude and location. Then start moving the quad back and forth, left and right, to get a feel for how the controls work. Once you've got that down, go crazy. The body and props of the Quadforce are color-coded, with yellow being the front of the vehicle. Combined with orange and green LEDs on the undercarriage, it's easy to know which way your quad is pointing during flight. Unlike most toy quads, the Quadforce can be used indoors and outdoors, as long as the wind isn't too strong. And the Quadforce can get up to quite a bit of speed even in its low power setting. The Quadforce is ridiculously fun to pilot. It's responsive, forgiving, and most importantly for beginners, it's really hard to kill. I crashed the Quadforce a lot into furniture, walls, the ground. Twit hosts
$50. And it's
and more than its share of trees.
Oh no! Oh no!
Not only is our review unit still running, but I haven't even had to replace the props. The standard battery will give you about 8 minutes of flight, but I was able to squeeze an extended battery into the tray for an additional 3 minutes. Also, the onboard camera is absolutely horrible. Add everything. Stills were blurry, the lens wasn't wide enough, and it's pointing in the wrong direction to see anything interesting. But I found that to be an advantage, because removing the camera and the prop guards bought me an additional 3 minutes of flight, giving me 15 minutes or so of quad awesomeness. In all, the Swan Quadforce video drone is an affordable, durable, easy-to-use platform for those who want to feel what it's like to fly a real quad, while not paying much more than you would for a toy.
What?
Exactly.
What?
The wood. Now, I would suggest you get something like this. I mean, you're with me on this, right?
Oh, totally.
Because
especially after my first experience.
Yeah, you don't want to crash a multi-hundred or even multi-$1,000 drone. The nice thing about something like this will actually teach you the physics, and the physics are very important. Once you understand the physics and once you understand orientation, like what is front and what is back and what do I have to do to make this thing respond the way I want it to respond, then take your expensive quadcopter out. Until then, crash this a lot.
Yeah, no, definitely. And when I first started flying the quadcopter, it kind of took me a little while to wrap my mind around when you're rotating it in the air, you know, the front and the back, you have to remember to do that. Exactly. Because in a panic situation, when it's getting close to the wall and you, it's an expensive one, it goes right into...
exactly. But if you practice, if you've trained yourself to realize, no, I've got reverse inputs right now, so if I want it to go that way, I actually have to get the control over to the left. That will come with practice. Now, I will say, when we first got this thing, when we got it as a review product for Before You Buy about a month ago, I had never flown a quad at all, except for one that a DJI person helped me to fly. And I picked up on it very quickly because, again, if you're not afraid of breaking the thing, you'll try stuff with the thing.
Right.
Yeah. So what we'd like to do is we actually have 2 links that we're going to be putting into the show notes. The first one is for this. You can get this at Fry's Electronics. Right now it's selling for $69. It's got a $10 rebate. So it's $60, which is still a decent price, again, because you're going to get a lot of use out of it. The other one, if you're an Amazon Prime member, jump over. It's called the SEMA X5C. It's the exact same copter with a different color scheme.
But it doesn't look as cool.
It doesn't look as cool, and it also doesn't have the camera. But this is $50 Prime, so
you don't need
shipped.
the camera anyway.
You really, I don't. I'm not gonna
after what we saw, yeah.
It's horrible.
So yeah, that sounds like a good
the
deal.
Children. Yeah. So pick one up and fly this, because we're going to teach you how to build a quadcopter that is far more capable than this, that has way more performance, but is also significantly more expensive. You know, we're talking 5 to 10 times more costly.
Right. And one thing that I wish I had known better was the propeller system when I flew the DJI, because you actually have to configure the rotation.
Right. Yeah.
And
you don't realize. Well, yeah, you don't realize that though they counter rotate. They don't all spin in the same direction.
Right.
And so if you put the wrong prop on the wrong motor, suddenly it doesn't know.
Well, I just wanted to fly it.
Yeah.
Like this. Like I just wanted to pick up the remote, turn it on, and fly it around. But the other one, you have to plug into your laptop. You have to like calibrate the propellers, which at the time I didn't really have enough understanding of, and that's why like I could never get it to fly straight.
Right.
And part of the reason I destroyed it.
Now, don't feel bad, because one of the segments that we'll be doing in the future is we're going to take that DJI and we're going to fix it. We're going to show people how to fix their busted drone. Okay, now what we wanted to do, if you look at the table, there's a lot of gear here. What we did was we actually purchased the equipment that we need for 3 different types of quad built. A few things that you're going to need. Your tool list, you're going to need a screwdriver. You're going to need snips, something to cut things with, a soldering iron, a heat gun or a lighter, and a voltmeter. And that's really all you need. There's not a lot of tools required. It's just a lot of patience and a lot of understanding of how these individual things work.
Okay.
Yeah. There are 10 things that you absolutely need for any quad build. The first thing is going to be the frame. We're going to talk about this on the next episode. So this is the frame for a 450 class, and typically you'll have, your 4 support members. These are where the motors are actually going to connect. This is the frame that is actually going to hold these together. Now, this is a cool frame. This is for the 450, but it includes the power distribution. So this is actually a printed circuit board, so I can connect my motors here and my electronic speed controls. The second part you're going to need, once you know what kind of frame you want, you can determine what kind of what kind of motor that you're going to need. So, for example, this is the frame for a 250 class. And the numbers, by the way, it just refers to the number of millimeters between the propellers.
That doesn't look too much.
Yeah, it's actually this is a 250 class.
Okay.
So that's a 250 class. This is a 250 class. This is a 450 class. As you can see, this is going to be a whole lot bigger. Now, the nice thing about this is that the larger the frame, the bigger the motor it can handle. The bigger the motor it can handle, the bigger the prop,
battery.
the bigger the prop, the bigger the battery, et cetera, et cetera.
And then you move on to the ones that can carry cameras and stuff like
exactly. 250 class can actually carry
like
cameras.
a GoPro or something?
You can carry a GoPro, and you can also do FPV if you wanted to do the first-person view.
I do want to do that,
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Now, so after the frame, you're also going to, and after the motors, you're also going to need what are called electronic speed controllers. It's just like the lunchbox build. Remember, we had that device that allowed us to control electronically how fast the motor would go.
Right.
Exact same thing. You're going to need 4 of them. In this particular case, for this this 250 build, these are just 12 amp speed controllers. So they're not really big. They're tiny little ones. But I've also got other ones for the larger build. So if this is 12 amp, these are my 30 amp speed controllers. A whole lot larger. And again, it's just because the larger the motor, the more current you're going to need a bigger. You need 4 of these because you're going to connect these to the flight controller. The flight controller is going to be connected to the receiver. So speed controllers, the next thing are my props. And again, the bigger the motor, the bigger the prop. So
the more damage you can do.
Big motor, big prop. Small motor, small prop.
Hey, okay, that looks really tiny.
It looks really, really tiny.
And that's a 3-blade.
Yeah, it's a 3-blade. I'm not a big fan of them. I prefer the 2 blades. But again, if you have a larger motor, you can afford to carry a bigger prop. But we're gonna explain to people why there are differences in props, because you can change the size and the pitch, the aggressiveness of the prop to change the characteristics of your quad.
Oh, so you could say like you want it to be super agile or something, or you want more stability?
Right, so you could increase lift, you could increase speed, you could increase performance and endurance. That's something you can control both with the size of the motor and the size of the prop.
That's like gearing on a car or something,
exactly.
But for a helicopter.
Yeah, except for a quad. The next thing is the flight controller. Now this is the magic sauce. This is the one that we're using for these builds. This is a, I think it's a KK 2.1. This is a little device that's going to connect to the receiver, and then all these little junctions are going to connect to all the motors. This could actually control up to an 8-bladed copter, so up to an octocopter. This will keep it level. This will provide the right inputs and will provide the right power to each of the motors.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's the brain.
This is the brain. After that, I'm going to need my RC transmitter and receiver. I'm using this one.
That's the one we used with the lunchbox too, right?
It looks like a lot like it. This is actually really inexpensive. This is a $64 6-channel, 2.4 gigahertz spread spectrum. Fantastic device. This is a FlySky. We're going to have all the links in the show notes, so you don't have to worry about it if you're not copying it down right now. But I could use this for any of the builds. Cool. So 250 all the way up to the 525. Now I'm also going to need a LiPo battery pack. So this particular one is a 2.2. This is 2200 milliamp hours. It's 35C. We're going to explain what that means when we get to the battery.
That one looks a lot more serious than like the one that's on the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. Like look at the size of this battery pack, and then look at the size of that battery pack. There's a whole lot more power in this larger one. It also means a whole lot more destructive power. So, so be careful. After the battery, you're going to need the LiPo charger. This is not like the battery for the lunchbox, which just had 2 leads.
Similar.
It has this. This is a balanced lead. So this allows me to specifically address each individual cell of my battery pack as long as I've got a balanced charger. And the charger that I decided to get was the IMAX B6 because it's the cheapest. This thing costs about 20 bucks. But it does a great job of balancing out what's called the state of charge, the SOC of each cell, so that I get the most life and the most longevity out of my pack.
Okay, wow.
Okay.
That's cool stuff.
So the other thing that you need, and I originally had this on the optional list, but I moved it up to the mandatory list. Of course. You need this. You need a LiPo bag. What
would you need that for,
lithium poly batteries can be dangerous. A LiPo bag is actually a non-flammable way to hold your batteries so that if they do have a runaway reaction, it's not going to burn down your house.
But are you supposed to be able to pick up the battery and throw it in there real quick?
No, like this is how you store them. And this is how you charge
them. So this isn't like, oh, I just crashed in a wall, it's igniting, don't...
No, but like if I did crash, I would always put my LiPo in a battery bag just to be safe. And actually there are people who have been doing this a lot longer than I, and they suggest like having a pail where you put the LiPo bag into sand so that even if it does ignite, it's like another layer of protection.
Okay.
Okay.
We're getting serious here.
Yeah. And then the last piece are going to be all the controller leads, because you're going to need to connect the receiver to the controller to the electronic speed controllers.
Right.
Now the optional parts are something like the power distribution harness. Now, in the case of my 450 here, the power harness is included in the frame. It's part of my PCB. But for example, in my 250 class, the power distribution looks just like this. It allows me to get from my battery into my 4 electronic speed controllers.
Okay.
It's optional because you could actually wire this on your own. You could just solder.
Yeah.
But if you buy it, it's a lot easier to do.
Right. A little less tedious.
Yeah. Also, you're going to need heat shrink tubing because you don't want any exposed wires. There's a lot of current flowing through these LiPo batteries. It could really kill you.
Okay. Yeah.
Just
all right. Safety first.
Yeah. And then quick connectors. Now again, we've got 3 different classes. We've got the 250, we've got the 450, and then we've got this frame here, which is just a tubular frame that's going to go around a chassis. This is a 525, and each one of these gets slightly bigger. Each one of these gets slightly bigger motors, slightly beefier electronic speed controls, and can carry slightly more battery power.
And you can use the same controller for all of those?
Same controller for all of those. So be sure to stop by our show notes because you'll see the parts list for everything. We give you links in case you want to go out and buy it. Now, I will say this. If you're going to start with the 250, and I would actually suggest you start with the 250 because it's small enough to be flown indoors, which is nice. You can get something from a company called Hobby King, and we have included the links for that. It includes everything that you need to do a 250 build except for the remote and the flight controller. This is their 250 FPV kit. It includes the frames, the right adapter bolts, 4 motors, the 4 electronic speed controllers, the battery, not the flight controller, and not the charger. So you buy 3 things, and for about $242, you'll be up and running and ready to assemble. Okay, so for like the very bottom of the pile, we have this, which comes in around like $60. Then the 250, which is $242. Then you go up to about $271 for the 450 class. The 525 we cheaped out, so it's actually only $242. If I were building it on my money, I wouldn't get that. I would probably, it'd be closer to $300. We have limited funds here. We gotta do what we can. We kind of ran out when we got to the 525. Like the motors on that are tiny. They're not great. But yeah, so if you were gonna build it honestly, 250 is gonna run you about $250. The 450 is gonna run you between $300, $350. A decent 525 is gonna be like $350 to $400. So all the more reason to start with low, see if you can get good at it, and if you like it, and then start working out from there. Because if you build one of these and you crash it, I guarantee you're gonna break something. You crash that. Just pick it up. You might break your spirit too. Yeah. I would probably cry a little. Yeah. Now, this is just an overview. Well, the reason why we did this is because people asked us where they can buy the stuff in case they wanted to build along with us. Yeah. Now you know. It's going to be in the show notes, so make sure you grab it from there. This is a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff. But what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks, we're going to go over each individual part. We're going to show you why you would choose a 250 or a 450 or a 525. We're going to show you how you choose your motors, how you size them out. We're going to show you what flight controllers you get, what batteries you get. We're going to show you how you choose your electronic speed controllers and your flight control. So we're going to give you the step-by-step on how to design, build, and assemble your class of quadcopter. That's awesome. Yeah. And if you are feeling overwhelmed, don't worry, because we have all the links and notes that you'll ever need at our page at twit.tv/KH. And not only that, you have former episodes which live there and which is going to be really handy for people following along over our quadcopter arc of multiple episodes. Exactly. So. And also don't forget that you could find us at our Google Plus page. That's actually a great resource for anyone who's building. There's a lot of quadcopter enthusiasts who have been flying a lot longer than I. I'm sure they're going to add their 2 cents worth. Yep. Just make sure to go to Google Plus, plus.google.com, and look for the know-how group. Join. There's about about 7,300.
Yeah,
almost
we're
7,400
getting
members.
close to 8. I feel
Yeah,
like.
it's nice. It's nice. So yeah, become a part of the community and contribute when you can. And
I
ask questions.
was browsing through there recently. Somebody was sharing the watch faces that they had made using Facer. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
I know. Yeah.
And also, don't forget that you can also find us on Twitter. That's a great place to find out what we do in between shows. You can find me at twitter.com/PadreSJ.
And you can find me at cranky_hippo.
Yeah, and also you can find our TD. He's a great guy. Is Alex Gumpel, I believe his Twitter is ANELF3. Does he have a camera on himself right now?
I think he's busy burning down the set because it's already almost 9 o'clock. Yeah, battery's on fire.
He wants to go home. Yeah, and also don't forget that you need to tune in each and every single week because every week we're going to give you a little bit more quadcopter knowledge. But until then, I'm Father Robert Balleser.
And I'm Brian Burnett.
And now that you know how,
go do it.
Right up at the camera.
Bruh, we need to do a quadcopter battle. We'll build all these quadcopters and then make a fight. Hit the camera.
No, I don't want to hit the camera. Okay. How about this?
Nice.